Beer. For decades, the nation's perception of beer has been drank by the stereotypical older gentleman. Until now. From pales to stouts and a few odd combos, beer is changing. More and more people across the UK are getting a taste for the world's oldest recipe, and nowhere more so than the city of Leeds. Welcome to Inside Leeds. Welcome to the age of beer. With nearly 200 years of brewing methods lost by the closure of Tetley's, the thirsty city of Leeds looked as if it had said its final goodbyes to the beer culture. But in recent years, the city has seen a revolution with over 15 independent breweries opening their doors to the public. Northern Monk, located half a mile from Leeds' train station, is a prime example of this.
My name's Brian, and I'm the head brewer down here. 2013, Northern Monk started. We started as a cuckoo brewing operation, which means we used spare capacity at another brewery. Did the job for us at the time, but we're very keen to get our own place, so 2014 we managed to get up and running here in the flat store, and yeah, it's full tilt ever since.
We get a really eclectic mix of people here, which is great. I mean, especially because we've got the event space upstairs as well. That kind of ranges from anything from kind of corporate bookings to wedding parties. We get students come down to do art exhibitions. There's a really great vegan following because of all the work that Grub and Grog have done in the kitchen, and also quite a lot of our beer is vegan. I'd say there's a pretty 50-50 split of men and women as well.
I mean, we take influence on the sort of beer front from all over the world. Obviously, it's American beer scene has been a big influence on us, but as well, and obviously the heritage of English brewing. I mean, most beer styles have got a root somewhere in the UK. We've got the motto, the evolution of tradition. We quite looking back at historic beer styles and the proud British brewing heritage, and putting our twist on it, evolving it, modernising it, and trying to make it do something new with it. You've got 4 raw materials: water, just good old Yorkshire Mains water, absolutely loads of it. Grain, hops come from all over the world, and the yeast, which is by far the most important one. As a brewer, we just create the right environment for the yeast to thrive and create the alcohol and flavour and CO2 and everything it does. So first we mash in, we take hot water, grain, mix it in the mash tun, create bake a giant porridge, get all the enzymes in there to break down the sugar into nice, easily fermentable bits. And then we transfer all that into a kettle, boil it up. That's where we add the hops. Add them at the beginning for bitterness, add them at the end for as much flavour and aroma as we can get out. Cool it down into a fermenter, add the yeast, 5 days fermentation, chill it down, and add more hops for flavour. And then it's just like a week or 2 conditioning, maturation before we package it into cask, keg, can or bottle, and send it out to the world. We deliver in our Monkmobile to Leeds, York, Manchester, Sheffield, all that surrounding area. It goes nationwide in the UK. We send it off to distributors as far north as Edinburgh and as far south as Brighton on a regular basis. On this track, I think we now export to 12 countries as well.
Just across the city, another independent brewery can be found.
My name's Seb Brink, I'm the head brewer here at North Brewing Co. The style of beer we make is very much under the kind of craft, new craft beer umbrella. There's a repertoire of styles which you'll find have come into favour recently, kind of hoppy IPAs using New World hops, and using beers generally with more interesting ingredients, higher ABV, so we're kind of quite easily within that bracket. I have my own brewery, a cuckoo brewery called Golden Owl, and I approached North Bar when I heard they were looking to set up a brewery almost 2 years ago now, and together we put this together. In terms of the kind of ethos of the brewery, we're just kind of aiming towards quality, aiming towards making, I don't want to make beers that sound interesting but taste, maybe don't taste great. So I'm keen on drinkability. I want you to be able to drink, lots of the beer, pints and pints of it. So it's all about making a beer that's nice to drink. You can drink a lot of it, but then it's also interesting. You do see a lot of people doing weird stuff, which I think it can be good if it's done well. Like there's a brewery in Manchester that did a horseradish and beetroot saison, and I don't know, do people want to drink that? I don't.
Northern Monk and North Brewing Co. have helped towards the revival of beer in Leeds and can be found in various bars across the city, including North Bar and Hedgerow House.
I'm Luca, and my role here is assistant manager, and I kind of take care of kind of purchasing. The venue as a whole is kind of an offer on each floor. So your first floor is the beer hall, the restaurant just below. We've got a music venue above us, and then the cocktail bar at the top. Kind of the crowd that we get in is a varied mix, which is great. Young, to mums and dads, to people in bands, to beer lovers, to cocktail lovers.
My name's Callum Lister, I'm General Manager here at North Bar. This place is kind of just open to everybody, so we tend to get like a lot of artists in. Obviously we do a lot of exhibitions on the wall. We've got Cat Scott in at the moment, who's a science artist. So as I say, we get a very broad clientele. So like everybody's been kind of, you know, almost repressed for like 20 years, like just drinking like Stella and Carlsberg and things like that, and now people are discovering that there's much more to do, much more that you can do with a beer. It is the case in the same way that it is with wine, you know, that once you develop a palate for something like beer or wine or whatever, then, you know, the rewards are awesome. So.
Beer has definitely had a reputation for being like an old man's drink maybe, but I think that's kind of vanishing quite quickly, and I don't know, I think those expectations of people socially are changing across loads of different fields anyway, so of course that's going to kind of bleed into the way that we eat and drink and enjoy.
In the past, people would often just look for that price point, wouldn't they? They just go, well, I'm going to drink the cheapest beer I can, I'm going to drink a lot of it. And I think people are changing the way they drink beer. They're drinking stronger beers, but they're drinking a bit less of it, and they're looking for quality.
People want to know where their money's going, and they want to know they're getting a really good value for what they're paying for, so they don't mind paying more if they know they're paying for a really good independent product.
What we tend to find here is that people actually drink less, they'll pay more for a quality product. People will be drinking things like thirds and halves. Schooner sizes are growing in popularity as well, which is like 2/3 of a pint. So.
People have just had to up their game. Like, we're living in a time when there's Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and everything has to look good and you want to be going to certain places. I feel like kind of that almost social pressure is changing the way that people consume things. I think especially with branding as well, like it affects the products that people want to buy now. Like people consider labels and people think about reputation. I think generally people are just a bit more knowledgeable about what they eat and drink.
Competition of others is going to drive you to do better, and you hopefully as a group you just bring up the quality as a whole, and obviously you put Leeds on the map for beer as well, which just helps the community, helps the bars, and it all goes full circle.
I've learned just recently, I went to Liverpool not too long ago, and I learned that Leeds is kind of very ahead of the game in the beer kind of world. But I think other cities they're only kind of getting to this stage now, and I think that's kind of fun. I think that gives you an idea of it not kind of stepping back in a way and letting the steam off. I think it's still going to progress and progress. People that have never really tried certain beers that we have here, they're going to try in other cities, and then it will keep growing. I think it's great.
Leeds has a huge beer culture. I've only been here 4 years, but in the time that I've been here, I felt the city has kind of grown so much and really built itself an identity for being a great city to drink beer.
I think in the last 6 months or so, Leeds is probably up there amongst the very, very best in the UK. It feels like every other week there's a new bar or a new brewery opening up, and they're all putting out great beer, and Leeds really buys into it, or they wouldn't be surviving. You know, the bars are packed every night. It's really, really fun place to be.
My impression is, compared to quite a lot of other cities in the UK, Leeds does pretty well. And I think Yorkshire in general has a lot of breweries. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard they've got like the highest amount of breweries per person. I don't know, that statistic was rubbish.
Yorkshire as a county doesn't have the most breweries in the country. Obviously Leeds being one of the biggest cities in Yorkshire, like kind of right in the middle, and it's just such an accessible thing unless you're a kid. Like just to sit and have a beer and chill with your mates, like that's pretty much it. Like, so I've kind of worked in Leeds on and off for about 5 years now. Like I was working in cocktail bars and everything like that, and there was a very noticeable kind of decline and a shift towards like real ale and what you would now call craft beer, I guess.
The trend of beer can now be seen up and down the country and is now responsible for almost 870,000 jobs according to government statistics. Campaign for Real Ale also claim there are now over 1,400 breweries across the UK, nearly doubling what was seen 5 years ago. But why the sudden explosion in popularity?
I don't think there's any kind of specific answer why. I just think there's kind of a lot of things you can do with beer and a lot of styles around now and a lot of experimenting people are doing that is quite interesting. There's never really kind of a beer the same as another in a way, so everything's always different. There's always kind of a taste you've never tasted before. It's kind of quite fun in a way to So each day, day by day, you drink a different beer that you've never had before.
Personally, I think it's just a wider trend throughout the UK and throughout the world, actually. I mean, craft beer, it's a huge growth of it worldwide. Like, you go to Italy, Scandinavian countries, even into Asia, there's a kind of growth of this style of beer and this kind of ethos of brewing.
If you look at some of the trends across the States as well, like everything, Americans always look to the UK for influence, and then they turn it up to 120%, and it comes back. And obviously, yeah, the big US hop flavors have really helped drive the evolution of beer in the last 10 years or so.
Year by year, it's just kind of progressing, and people are finding different ways of experimenting with beer, and I think this is great, and that's kind of where we're going now. So.
I mean, my own personal opinion is like these things kind of come in waves. There's already a kind of surge of micro distilleries that are popping up now. Maybe people will kind of go more towards that. However, I just think that there's so much variety and so much option that we're at a kind of capacity with everything. So it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna change per se, basically.
Little independent breweries are never going to completely take over from the big breweries. We can't expect that. They fight too hard for their bar space. But you'll see a growing market share. I think the standard will continue to improve. I think that's something the UK brewers are really starting to catch on. Is that you need that quality control and consistency, and these independent brands are getting known. We're getting into supermarkets now, and with that, people need to know that when they buy a can of Northern Monk Eternal, it's going to taste like Northern Monk Eternal. That's no bad thing. That's what the big breweries do really well. Is that if you buy a can of Carling, it's going to taste like Carling. And given how much they make, I mean that's still a good achievement. But it doesn't mean the small breweries can't do it too. So you can still be creative and innovative and maintain consistency. I think that's the key going forward.
Although the beer industry has recently exploded in popularity up and down the country, Britain has had a rich history of beer for centuries. Kirkstall Abbey, located in Leeds, has a brewing heritage stretching back to the 12th century, when Cistercian monks founded an abbey that included a circular brew house.
Well, Northern Monk means the name for starters. It's a touch to the heritage of monks brewing. Obviously, they're most famous for brewing in Belgium, but in the UK, like Kirkstall Abbey, they were brewing there for hundreds of years, and they brewed beer to sort of support the community and to raise funds to keep their abbeys and the surrounding community alive. So we always liked that element of that. And obviously we're very proud of our northern roots and heritage, so that bit's self-explanatory. I
think in America, they didn't have the tradition. Well, the tradition of small breweries had died out with Prohibition. So in the 60s and 70s, there was only very big breweries. So they had to reinvent this idea of a small local craft brewery, and that's when they called it craft brewing. Built very slowly through the 70s and 80s, and then in the 90s it took off. In the UK, we've never lost that tradition of small breweries. I mean, I think it was under a bit of pressure maybe in the first half of the 20th century, but we've always had small independent breweries making unique products. Like in Leeds, if say we're running low on some ingredient like some finings or some kind of chemical, and I'll phone up Northern Monk or Ridgeside and say, can I borrow a little bit? So we help each other out. If we're a bit low on a sack of malt or whatever, we can call on each other.
North Brew Co are lovely. We were actually talking the other night. There's a dead bit of plant here. We were talking the other night about maybe doing some collaborative things with a few breweries in Leeds, sort of forming a bit of an alliance, which is really nice because I think sometimes in this industry there can sometimes be a little bit of hostility or a competitive nature, so it's always really exciting when you meet someone that kind of wants to push that aside and just get on and do nice stuff.
North is actually quite exclusive to here and only a few bars in Leeds, and I think that's really good. Kind of gives us a bit of exclusivity for that beer. There's
an opportunity for all of us to be able to work together. None of us have really kind of latched onto that yet, but this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll start getting that sorted. We're looking into doing some events working alongside Hedgerow House, Belgrave, Reliance, Brunswick, so kind of all this area and really making this area kind of like, pump as it were.
So there you have it, a quick guide to the age of beer.
It's done, is it?
Cheers, I'm
Oh, cheers. That's good beer.